Okay, got them cut to length and squared on both ends and jointed on one side. Now I'm just going to rip them all to width here. Okay, got two sets of 4 here, cut the length, rip to width. S4S. That's the easy way to say it. So they're all set to go. And then I'll show you my next step here using my LS positioner to do, I'll make these box joints, and then the box joint jig I made that works with a THK bearing rail, not necessarily ours, but a THK bearing rail. So let me set this up for you. Okay, a word about my LS positioner. It's an Incra tool. These guys make fantastic stuff. I hope you can see that there, LS Incra. The one I own is an LS25. They make a 17 and a 32. So here's the thing that I really didn't like about it. I'll do that first. Is that this is their sled that they have for their fence. Okay, so this to this plate mounts a fence, this steel plate, and then you have to shim your fence to square it up. You just use tape or paper or whatever, but that's in their instructions. They tell you how to do that. Then this mounts over the top of that fence and rides along this channel here, and you've got these UHMW set screws that are adjusted to take up the slop. You know, that works really well. And then you fasten your work to this aluminum extrusion grid, to which I mounted this distacto clamp. But that's been sitting there for quite a while. I haven't used it in a long time. So then your sled rides along your router tabletop, and then you route your pins, and then you move your LS positioner whichever direction you want to go. What I've done is I've done away with this, And I've made my own sled. So let me show you what that is. I've got my bit set here, but I got to bring my fence in. Hang on a second. So what I can do is just slide my fence over. If this bit wasn't in the way, I would slide my fence over and put it anywhere I need. But what I'm going to do now is just attach this plate to my extrusion here. So let me reposition the camera so you can see that. Hang on a second here. Okay, because of the slots in the extrusion and the slots in this steel plate, I'm able to mesh these two up just perfectly. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to tell you, I guess, before we get too carried away. An LS, I hope you can see this, an LS 17 is, as of today, 189 bucks on the Inker website. And a 25 is 209, and a 32 is 229. So depending upon your budget, why, that's what those things are going for today. And this is how they work. You can see that to my outfeed table here, I just have there's four bolts, two on this side and two on the other side. I just drilled through my table and I fastened it as far back as I could to get the maximum range out of it. And then the one other thing you need to be aware of is you need to have the room on this side as well, so that when you kick it all the way out, you don't hit a wall or something. And that's why I positioned this where I did. I could go right to the edge here just about and still have my full 25 inches of movement. So back to how I fasten this. So as you bring the positioner up, it's got a lock on it. One back here, this is the lock. It's got two positions. That's open. That allows you to use this micro adjuster. So every click is 1/1000th of an inch. So that now it'll move, but then once you have it positioned where you want, then you fully engage the lock. And now it's not moving. Okay? But one other thing I want you to notice is when I engage that lock, you'll see this head move up and down a little bit. See how it comes up? And then fully locked. Now that thing is rock solid. So when you attach it to the fence, I need to make sure that it's up. Otherwise, it's going to want to lift my fence every time, and that's going to mess things up. So I've got two T-nuts in there already. I bring that up, lock it, grab my Allen key here. Make sure the T-nut's where it needs to be, and then run in my bolt. Nope, I didn't get that other one on the back side. Hang on a second. No. You want to make sure your fence is disengaged as well. Okay, so now my positioner is engaged with my fence and I can move this freely. And I leave my fence unlocked when I'm doing this or using this. This is now my fence lock, right there. And now my fence that's not moving. For what I want to do, it's perfect. Okay, so now This is the box joint jig I made for this fence. Now you're probably thinking this is overkill, but this is what I do. So, 1 THK bearing, and let me show you this quickly here. I'll take this off again. When you go to mount your bearing, and I guess this is a good time to show this too. All I did here was I've got my bearing mounted to a piece of Baltic birch. I'm guessing it's probably about 8 inches or so, 8 by 3. Drilled a couple holes through it, and then mounted it with T-bolts to a drop of extrusion. Okay, so when you go to put this on, you need to be very gentle and careful with that, so you don't kick those little ball bearings out. Take your time, put it on nice and easy, and there we go. So that now is my my new sled for making box joints. So then to this board that's mounted to my bearing, that's that drop of extrusion I showed you, and then I'll come around here and show you what I did on the other side. And then I've got a piece of 3/4 inch Baltic birch. This piece is, let's see what this one is. This one's about 11 and a half by about 6. And then to this piece of extrusion, I drilled three bolts up here. Actually 4, I guess. Countersunk them and mounted it perpendicular to this one, which allowed me then to mount my new face plate from the back side here. Another drop of extrusion. So let me grab the camera here quick. So here's the bolts holding the extrusion. Well, there we go. Holding this piece here, and then on the bottom I've got a series of holes. I'm only using 3 of them, the top and this bottom one, to mount this other piece of extrusion that I use to clamp my work to. Okay, so let me show you how I clamp my work and set this up. Okay, so I got my jig here. This, I've got a block that I know to be, it's square and perfect. But what this block does for me is that it allows me to register off my fence. And I'm going to bring this over just a little bit here. So my block is sitting on my plate. I'm going to take 2 of my pieces, push them up against that block, and what this block does for me is it gives me room to get my clamp in here. So I can just gently lock that, make sure that everything's flush. Bring in another clamp. So now I'm using these Festo clamps in this extrusion, and it has a positive lock. I mean, they're not moving, and everything's pushed down, everything's flush, and that now I can lock them. to my original setting. Which on my scale is 4 inches. And then that brings me just to the outside of that bit. Just, I can feel it rubbing ever so slightly right there. Okay, so now I'm ready to make my cuts. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to keep things matched up here. I'm going to do these two, then these two. So that this is like a male and a female. So this piece I'll run at, I've got my measurements here. Let me grab these quick. I call them side 1 and side 2. So side 1, I run at 3 inches, 2 inches, then I move over another 1/8 because my bit is a 1/2 inch for that 5/8 spacing, and then I move to 7/8 of an inch. And then I just flip them end for end and do the same thing. Then on my side 2s, I start at 3.5, 2.5, and then go to 1 3/8 inches. And then that gives me a perfect mate. Okay, so let's run them here. One thing I forgot to mention, the height of the bit is set to just barely above. This is actually way too high. Go ahead and check that. There we go. Just barely above the surface of the board that I'm check the other side. That'll work. Okay, so now I'm ready to run them. Okay, so there's the first two pieces, or first two sides. So half, 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 5/8, and then half, and then my little extra piece here that gets trimmed off. Okay, now I'll do the mating pieces. Get my block in here again. Incidentally, I got on my block, I've got an X and an X. So I know the X goes toward the fence and this X goes up. So I'm always registering the same way. Okay, so tight to the block. Just snug it. Make sure we're flush. Get my block out of the way. The one thing I did want to tell you was when I was making this cut, the first cut, here, went this way, then made this one full cut, and then made this 1/8 inch cut on this edge here. And the bit was spinning this way. It spins counterclockwise. And as I went into that, if I was using that sled, my old sled, this thing would have just pulled right through. But because I've got this THK bearing reel and it's got such mass behind it, I just hold on to this bearing and I had complete control. I was able to climb cut that without any problem at all. And then also I climb cut this edge, the last cut, without any problem. And then when I flip them over, now I'm going the correct way. I had complete control. There was never any problem at all. So now with these, I offset by a 1/2 inch the other way. So now I go to 3.5, 2.5, and then 1 3/8. So let me make these cuts for you. should have made that climb cut like I did on this side, on this cut up here. I ended up with a little blowout right there. So I'll have a little repair work to do. Either that or that goes on the bottom. Actually, that'll be okay. If I put that on the top, I gotta make a rabbet. So that'll get rabbited out anyway. So I'll be okay. So let's see how they fit here. There you go. With a little gentle persuasion and a little glue, that'll be a nice joint. So there it is. See here. Nice fit. I gotta, set that in a little bit, give it a little nudge. But a very fine joint. So made with my VSC fence, an LS positioner, and a THK bearing rail. So this just works out slick. I'm gonna make my other set. We won't have to put you through that. And then when I get done with that, I want to show you how easy it is for me to break this down and go back to another operation, to set up my tenon jig or back to ripping. It's so fast and easy. So we'll be back with you in just a minute here.